This video is about developing a daylight design strategy for a new or remodeled house. Hi, I'm Daniel of Clarke Architect. If you're designing a new house or remodeling an existing one and you're concerned about the quality of the indoor space, this video is for you. You may not realize how important daylight is to the indoor environment. The right daylight design strategy can bring the right quality of light into your home and improve the quality of your family's life. So when the weather turns crappy, does your family feel stuck inside? Or are you dancing around the space feeling, wow, this is such a great house? Chances are there are some spaces that are underlit, maybe gloomy or even dark. And on a sunny day, there may be some rooms where, gosh, it's just so darn bright, and you'd pull the blinds, but it's already just roasting in there. As a result, you've got some underused spaces in your home. And at the same time, primarily throughout the winter, the lights, all of the lights are on inside the house. You're paying for the electricity. I embrace detailed analysis at the early phases of design. This is the most effective and cheapest way to build high-quality daylight into the design of your house. You should be able to enjoy a brightly lit home, not wandering between dark and gloomy rooms. You deserve to enjoy every square foot of that house you put so much time, effort, and money into. Now, at the end of this video, I want you to have a bit of an understanding of the main parts of a daylight design strategy. How much light, what kind of light, when and where light enters the house, and once it does enter, how it's able to move around through the spaces. I think it's pretty obvious to most people that natural daylight coming into a space improves the indoor environment, but we may not have enough of an appreciation of what impact daylight has and how it can improve the space. Now, this improvement goes beyond just the scientific, mathematical calculation of distribution of light throughout the space. It goes even beyond the psychology of natural daylight's impact on people inside. In fact, it used to be an art of bringing in a variety of the light that made the space more interesting. You might want to have more dramatic light in some spaces to accentuate something, or to improve light in a specific area for better circulation. So a good daylight design strategy is not making more windows and making them bigger. In fact, it starts off with the building form, the orientation, and the location of the building. Now, the form, the best way, the simplest building rather to daylight is one that's long and skinny and oriented to the south. Now, that long and skinny means there's less depth that the light has to penetrate into the house, and you have more of the facade exposed to the sunlight. It's not always available, but that's the simplest. Now, you also have to consider what's around the building. Are you at the bottom of a valley? Are you at the top of a mountain? Are you on the mountainside? Is it a level clearing? Are there trees around? That's going to impact how much light's available and what times of the year. If you're surrounded by deciduous trees, you'll have more sunlight in the winter and less sunlight in the summer. If it's a coniferous environment, then obviously you're going to have shading throughout the year, and that will limit the amount of sunlight that you have to work with. So picking where and how this light comes in can be a bit of a puzzle because you might have contradictory needs. You might have a need for illumination, a need for heating, and especially the need for views to the exterior can contradict your other more functional needs. Now, to start with, you should be sizing your windows appropriate to the climate and to the exposure. Smaller windows on north-facing up in the northern hemisphere, and smaller windows for colder climates, generally speaking. The well-positioned windows at the right height, even small ones, can provide ample light for illumination. But you know what? You might want a specific view. In general, you should not have glass below 3 feet, 3'6", that basically counter height, because it's just giving excess heat in the summer perhaps, or maybe that's excess heat loss during the winter. Unless you have a specific need for a view downwards, let's say you're overlooking a valley or something else interesting, then you want to continue the glass down to the floor. Now, in general, tall windows are better at bringing in light than wide windows. I know the wide, skinny windows are a more contemporary look. The old style windows are the ones that were more structurally simple, but they were actually more effective if you look at the older buildings with taller spaces. The head height of a window will determine how far that light enters the space. And if your building is able to do this, the best lighting for a space is from two sides, from a window and another window if possible, or if not, from borrowed light, maybe a window on the other side of the adjacent room. Now, windows are the easiest and the most obvious. In addition, we have other window-like features. Skylights. Skylights have a bad rep. Typically, it was bad products, and more importantly, poor detailing. The right detailing, the right construction execution, and a quality skylight product is going to give you a worry-free light from above. Additionally, you can have clear story windows. Those are windows that are higher than your typical head height, maybe at 7 or 8 feet, or even higher yet. The less high they are, the easier they are to access for cleaning or for replacement if they get broken. You could also have light wells. These are shafts, whether they're outside of your heated air, outside of the building envelope, or they're actually penetrations through your roof with a skylight at the top perhaps. That'll help bring a very eventually diffuse light into the space. Another trick to use is flaring the window openings, especially on a higher performance house where the walls are maybe thicker. This makes more of a difference. You can flare out the outsides or flare out the insides or both, and this will allow more light from the sides to enter through the glass itself. So now we've talked about getting the light in. Let's talk about solar control, controlling the amount of light that comes in. We're pretty familiar, I think, some of us, with the shading devices in very hot climates where it's critical to limit the amount of light coming in. However, those exterior shading devices could also be used to bring light in, extra light in a more productive fashion instead of just straight on sunlight. These could include horizontal or vertical louvers, brise soleil, light shelves on the inside of a space that are mounted higher up, just below the top of the window, and they'll bring in that highlight, bounce it up against the ceiling to bring the light further into the space. Again, a very diffuse light. You could also use mirrors. Mirrors, more of a furniture item, may or may not go with your decor, but they'll also help bounce light in around the space. And of course, reflective surfaces, other reflective surfaces. The ceiling is the most effective, the walls a little less so, but the reason why we don't have shiny ceilings and shiny walls is it highlights the imperfections of the materials of the installation. So at the very least, we have white ceilings and white or off-white walls most of the time. That'll improve the amount of light bouncing into the space, make it light further in. Now you could also have a reflective floor. You have to be careful with this though, whether we're talking a wood floor, tile, it doesn't matter. You locate it in the right way with respect to the windows because you don't want direct sunlight or even a lot of bright daylight bouncing off that floor and blinding you. You want it hitting you in the face. Even with the best executed daylight strategy, you can't avoid artificial lights. Partly because it's a building code requirement to have artificial light, but also light at nighttime, obviously. And in some cases, even with the best daylighting strategy, you might need a little more light into that space. Two important things here. Number one, you want the artificial light to be color matched to the daylight. If it's just skylight that's coming in, that bluish light, then you'll want a cool colored light. If it's direct sunlight and you need, again, a bit more light in a corner or something, then you want it to be a warmer light. LED lights, you want very energy efficient light, obviously, but LED lights do come in cooler and warmer colors. The second thing to note here, if you're putting in those lights next to the natural light source, is to align the light fixtures parallel with the natural incoming light, because you don't want a conflicting or competing or distracting pattern. You want it to be supplemental to the natural light that comes in. Something else you may want to consider here are occupancy sensors or photosensors. Now the occupancy sensor, if no one's in the space moving around for 15 minutes, half an hour, that sensor will turn off the light. Photosensors, if it's bright enough in the space, that'll also turn off the light. So even with this brief video, you can tell that there are a lot of pieces that go into a daylighting design strategy, and you can burn a lot of time and effort on it. Really give yourself a bit of a headache. But there is a diminishing return on investment of time and effort here. At some point, you just have to take a more subjective look at it and guesstimate, where is the sun going to come in and bounce around, and what times of day and what time of the year, because ultimately weather itself is unpredictable. Human behavior, let's say one family moves out, another family moves in, or all sorts of changes that could happen that you can't predict. So don't try to get too hung up on it. As long as you're looking into each of these features and each of these components that I've mentioned, and then you take this gut feeling look at it, you should be pretty confident that the people in that place, your family, is going to be able to enjoy pretty much every square foot of that house pretty much any time of year. Okay, so let's just summarize here. The main parts of a daylight strategy are how much light is going to enter the space, what kind of light it is, when and where it enters into the house, and how it moves around once it's inside. Let's consider the light coming into the space. This is impacted by the building's shape and its orientation, and also by the surroundings. Then there's also the windows, their shape, and where they're located around the house, facing south, facing north, and of course other openings such as skylights, clear story windows, light wells, and flaring the sides of the window openings. Then we look at the controlling of this light with shading devices that may block or actually reflect light higher into the space, overhangs, either roof overhangs or from the floor above, louvers that may be horizontal or vertical, brise soleils that can be angled to suit the latitude, and surrounding trees and whether these are deciduous or coniferous. Then we consider shiny and reflective surfaces inside the space to bounce the light around, light shelves that bounce light back up into the ceiling, and generally white colored ceilings and walls, and possibly even mirrors in your space. And last, artificial lighting that needs to be color matched, warm or cool to the incoming natural light, and aligning the light fixtures with that natural light source. And lastly, occupancy or photo sensors to turn off the lights when they're not needed. So if you want to talk about this a little further, about your particular project and how you can incorporate daylight right at the design stage, feel free to get in touch with me by booking a project consultation call from my website.